Hello, welcome to another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. I have a very special guest today who has a story that you all need to hear. Please welcome my guest today, Reshma Kearney. Reshma. Even though we just talked about it, I still fucked.
That's okay.
So, Reshma, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into your story.
Yeah, I am a mom of three. That's my most important role. I'm a widow and I am a survivor of suicide loss. And I lost my husband to suicide in 2022. It was September 30th, 2022. So we're nearing the 3-year mark. Ironically, it was the last day of Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, which I didn't know at the time, but I know very well now. Sean was an orthopedic surgeon in the Army. He got out after 16 years. He was a lieutenant colonel. And we had just moved from Georgia State to Washington State, where we were supposed to start forever. And that was in 2022. He had separated from the Army just a couple months before he made the initial move to Washington State. Our 3 kids and I stayed in Georgia for the rest of the school year, and we reunited with him that summer of 2022, and it was amazing. We were on the top of the world, had so many dreams and plans for the future, and the summer was great. We got into the school year early September, and at the end of September, he ended his life. It was a shock to all of us and to anybody who knew him well. Sean was extremely hardworking. He was very focused and dedicated, and he never gave up, even in moments when I'd want him to give up. It'd be a holiday weekend, and he'd be determined to put new cabinets in the kitchen on his own, and we're sitting and waiting for him to be done so then we can go do fun things together. This was the ultimate giving up
Yeah.
in my mind. So, like I said, we were all shocked, but over time, as I started to process the loss and read more about mental health, especially for men, I'm not surprised that he didn't want to be in this world anymore.
Yeah, it's
So,
scary though. The numbers are just staggering. God, what is it like? It's 80% of all suicides are men, and then
yeah,
the other scary thing is 50% of the population are men. So like if you look at the statistics, we're losing men faster than we're reproducing men. And in
yeah.
Sean's case, he just couldn't do it anymore. And like I'm so sorry first off, because it's got to be hard with especially the kids. Do the kids know what happened to Sean? Have you told them, or is it kind of they just too young
Yeah.
for that?
Yeah, the kids were my son was 10,
Hmm.
my middle child, daughter was 8, and the youngest, another daughter, had just turned 7, 6 days before, and they knew immediately the day they came home that day that it happened, they came home from school, and I have to say it was a volunteer chaplain who came to the house from the police department who encouraged me to tell them the truth,
Yeah.
because otherwise I had people in my ear, like my parents and some other family members, who were telling me to say anything but the truth, that he died in his sleep or he had a heart attack. And this chaplain had seen so much and he had been doing this work for 30 years. So something inside of me told me to listen. And I can say there has not been one day that I've regretted making that choice. So we did tell them that their dad died that morning while they were at school, that he ended his life, that he shot himself. And then it was my job later that night and for weeks after to talk to them about depression and anxiety. And the most important thing was to let them know that this wasn't because of them
Yeah.
or because of me, because that's the hardest thing for children to understand.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Oh, hats off to you first off for having a conversation so young with them about it. I cannot stress it enough. I feel people need to have mental health conversations with kids younger so they better understand these things in case they may start having problems. Like, hey, listen, this is what that is. If you start having these kind of feelings, here's an idea what it would be like, But Oh my god, that conversation, girl, hats off to you, because I don't know if I could have that conversation with my kids. I would, but at the same time, I don't I'd struggle through that conversation because it's hard to say, "Hey, listen, unfortunately, dad's no longer here, and he decided to take his own life." But the fact that you're making sure they understand, "Listen, guys, it wasn't your fault. Dad was just not well," you know,
Mhm,
it's powerful. I think it's great because a lot of people you find that didn't know what happened to their parent and it involves suicide. A lot of times later on, they're like, well, then they find out they're like so jaded because they're like, well, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because it depends. Like it's a hard conversation. Like suicide's a hard conversation in general. Let's just go right there. It's hard enough to talk about it without people panicking, like Godzilla's crushing Tokyo. Like, oh God, no. As soon as somebody calls you and says, hey, listen, I'm thinking about killing myself, most people instantly freak out, go, oh my God, but like
mhm,
I think a lot of people need to realize is that if they're talking to you, you're already winning that battle already. Stop and listen to what they're saying because, now if the conversation gets dicey, like you feel like they're going to do it, 988's there for that reason. You could always
mhm.
get on their line, call them and things like that, and stuff like that too. And like you were saying with Sean though, like a lot of times you won't even know what people are thinking because he was happy go lucky. Everybody knew him, didn't have any idea this is what Sean's inner demons were, and things like that. Did Sean have any mental health issues that you knew of?
He did struggle with depression and anxiety for almost the entire 16, 17 years that we were married,
Yeah.
and it was like every year he'd go through something, and I
Yeah.
called it the downward cycle that year, and I would help him through that, listen to him,
Yeah.
support him, and at the end of it, when he'd start coming out of that, I then remind him that I can't do everything to support him, I can't help him, I'm not a therapist, I'm not his therapist, and I would encourage him to see somebody or talk to somebody else, and he'd refuse, and so it was really hard, and every year it seems like the depression was a little bit darker and lasted a little bit longer up until that final year of his life.
Yeah, that's just yeah. And you're also thinking to you're like, okay, well, when is it gonna happen again? You're just kind of counting the days. Okay, well, Sean should may have that moment here soon enough, or something like that. And it's just like it's not something you want to look forward to, but and he struggled, and a lot of men
Mhm,
do. And it's I think you did the right things by telling him to talk to somebody like, hey, listen, I can listen all day, sweetheart, but I can't help you. Like you need to get somebody that can help you get through these thoughts and people that are trained to handle to do these things. But you did the right thing though. You were there, and it's hard though now that he's gone. It's like you'll have survivor's guilt because you're like kind of like, well, what if? And and I think that's what a lot of people do. They beat themselves up afterwards. They're like, well, what I could have done more. Sometimes you couldn't do more. Unfortunately, that's the scariest part about it. It's like suicide is so hard sometimes for people. It's just like don't blame yourselves. I mean, like you sometimes you just can't help people. Like they have those thoughts. They feel like something that they have that's going on that they just want to get away from. I think a lot of people think it's selfish, and I think we need to just cut that bullshit right now. Honestly, it's not selfish. It's they're struggling with something. They're battling some kind of demon. And you didn't know what it was. It got worse, though. It's hard to watch because he's just self destructing, and you're like, oh my god, what can I do?
mhm,
And things like that. I'm sure, and then the kids probably saw it too, some things too, because kids are just 4. They recognize a lot of things that are going on in the house. They may not be able to tell you, but they're watching what you and Sean were doing, and they're seeing dad going through these rough modes and things like that too. So it's just, oh my God, girl, hats off to you though. I mean,
thank
you're out here
you.
doing all these interviews, talking about sharing Sean's story. And I think it's important that people understand that Sean's story is going to touch somebody's heart. And somebody's gonna be like, well, damn, I'm just like Sean. I need to get some help now. And
Mhm,
you having the bravery to go out and talk about this, it's going to inspire somebody to get help, or somebody's going to hear us and go, well, my damn, my loved one kind of sounds like this a little bit. We need to get them some help. So I mean, it's so great that you're out doing these interviews and things like that too. I don't think I could have do it. I'll be honest with you. Like I don't know how
mhm,
I would have done if I had to deal with the situation. I run a mental health podcast. I hear things all day, but I just don't know if I could do it though. It's so hard because when it comes to that topic, it's just like it just chokes me up a little bit when I'm listening to this story. When you're telling me about, Sean unfortunately took his life, and it's just like, there's gonna be a moment 3 where I cry on this show, guys, everybody, and it's happened
mhm.
before, but it's okay though. It's like it's rough, But, at least the kids know the truth, I think that's the greatest thing about this whole outcome is that the kids know what happened. You're teaching them now, like, "Hey, these are the things that your mental health issues that go on now," and I think you're doing great things. So what have you been doing since Sean's gone? Have you gone on a mission to try and help other people and things like that too? Because I'm sure a lot of people came to you and said, "Resh," and they obviously the first thing they said is, "Reshma, what is it that I can do for you?" You know what I mean? Like the initial thought, or did you get a lot of
Mhm.
advice from people?
Yeah,
The
I
eye
don't know
roll
if I
says it all.
got
If you're all not watching the video, the
yeah,
eye roll says it all.
I don't think I got prescriptive advice. It was the general grief platitudes
Yeah,
that we all hear. You're so strong. If anyone can get through this, you can. It could have been worse. I don't know. Just a lot of different general statements. Of course, I hold grace for those people because really, what do you say to somebody
exactly. I think you're making a
who's
really good
lost
point right
someone
there.
to suicide? Yeah, I've noticed just actually recently, I lost my uncle. He was 87. It, it's a you're sad, but you're also prepared
Yeah.
for it and you feel a little more peace. But I noticed just how the family in our group messages respond to that type of loss. Like everybody has all these memories to share of him and the words of sympathy and encouragement. And I was thinking there was no group messaging when Sean passed away. Now, of course, all these family members were reaching out individually and checking in on me through my parents. So it's not their fault, but this just shows you how much these conversations are needed because
Mhm.
we're not comfortable around this type of loss. If Sean had died in a car accident, I'm sure the conversation um, and the expressions of sympathy would be so much different.
Yeah. Listen, let me ask you a question. Did anyone ever ask you what they could do for you?
Yeah,
That's good.
they
Because
did.
a lot
And
of
I'm
people don't
grateful
ask
for
that
that.
question either. A lot of people don't ask that question. That's a scary part of it all. It's like,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to loss and grief, it's like, I think you made a really good point that I want to touch on though. You said that, what do I say to somebody? A lot of times say nothing. Just say, hey, listen, if you need something, I'll be here, because you don't know what you're going to say. They don't want to hear about your problems, and I like to quote Jim Ross. He's an announcer. I was a big wrestling fan back in the 90s and he had lost his wife and he said, listen, I don't want to hear your fucking bullshit. And this is his exact statements. He said, because somebody came up to him after his wife's death and said, like, hey, listen, Jim, then started telling him about his problems. Like, listen, he's like, I don't want to hear your problems right now. I just lost my fucking wife. I don't want to, you know what I mean? It's a crude statement, but at the same time, it's so surreal to what you were saying is that, like, what do you say to somebody?
Yeah. And I think that what do you say to somebody holds true for any type of loss. But, you know, just holding space for people and letting them know that you're there. And like you said, don't jump into what's going on with you.
Hmm.
I heard a number of people tell me about other suicide examples and they mean well and it's nice, but in the moment when you've just lost your person, you're not really listening to anything anyway.
Hmm.
You can't hear the words that are coming out of people's mouths. So it's just best to hold space. And you asked, how many people said, how can I help you or what can I do to help? A lot of people did. But what I'm learning is that people who are grieving are in a place of not even knowing what they need in that moment. And rather than ask, what do you need? Just do something. I had a friend who would send me a red heart emoji every morning. I don't know. I've never asked her if she set an alarm or had a reminder, but for almost a year, she sent me a red heart emoji every morning. And I initially didn't respond at all. And then I would like it. And then I would send an emoji back. And then I'd slowly start talking.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. I thought that was a really unique way of showing somebody that you're there without being in their space or making it uncomfortable.
Or like you said, you just didn't know how someone could help you. You weren't, you had a lot going on, then you just lost Sean and then you had to tell your kids that unfortunately, dad's no longer here. Girl, I
Mhm.
couldn't even imagine the things going through your head at that time because it had to be a lot. and it was rough, but, that one act of kindness, like I said, is just great. It's like I always sign off the shows, always say the same things, you don't wanna kind of tell that, save somebody's life or even make their day, like, that just made your day because all she did was just send you the heart, and
Mhm.
I have a friend, that's what we do, we send each other good morning messages on Snapchat all the time, and,
Mhm.
he goes through rough times and depression too and things, and every day he sends the same thing, and I always message him back every single day. I make an effort to. Some days I get a little later than usual, but he understands, I'm juggling a lot of things. But I make an effort to message him back every day because he's always messaging me, hey, good morning. And I message him
Mhm.
back morning when I'm up or in the afternoon, or I'll send something funny back to him, and things like that too. And it's funny because we don't know each other. We never met each other in person yet. We met online. We met on TikTok, funny enough. But we'll message each other every day and ask each other, like, hey, how's it going? And that's all it is. One kind of act you can do that literally could save somebody. You don't know if that person is going through at that time, and that's always a good reminder though to check on people that you haven't heard from in a while. Just a simple text or just simple the little heart emoji and things like that that you can make their day for all you know. It's like that's gonna be just the one thing
Mhm.
they need to just be like, okay, well somebody knows I'm here still.
Yeah, I agree. It's all about connection. I think that's what it comes down to, and unfortunately, we're living in a world where we have less and less of that
Hmm.
as time goes on. But I think especially for men, they want the same thing women want, which is connection and words and knowing that they're seen and heard.
I think those are all really great points, because a lot of people that do end up doing suicide as a death. A lot of them will say that too. A lot of people you talk to, a lot of times when they're in that situation, it's like they don't feel like they're being heard. They don't want to be a burden, all these other kind of things, and a lot of times, the other thing too is if somebody ever calls you and says that they're thinking about killing themselves, you say, listen, are you really thinking about committing suicide? I learned this from a person that's actually trained. They said that if you ask them that question, a lot of times it'll be just a little kickback. They need to realize that, listen, are you serious about this, or is this just some thoughts going through your head? Because then you'll know for sure if they're really thinking about it too. And then obviously have 988 on standby, ready to go if you need to call them because. And the other thing is, don't leave them alone on the phone. You can merge the call in, have them there, and then hand them off to somebody that can handle these things. And
Mhm.
and I've heard horror stories of people that have called people and they're in that situation. Like always, people always say, "Well, hey, call me when you need something." And when you call that person, then they don't answer the phone. It's like, well, bro, you just told me to call you, fool. What are you doing? Come on now,
Mhm.
do better.
Yeah.
So since Sean's passing, what have you been up to? Have you been out there pushing for more suicide awareness and things like that too? I know you've been doing a lot of interviews and things like that. I bet you've
Yeah.
had a lot of interesting interviews and things too.
Yeah, so when he passed away, I got off of social media entirely. It just wasn't a safe and healthy space for me. And after a year and a half, when I came to a place of healing and could see how well the kids and I were doing, how much better we were doing, I decided to get back onto social media to raise awareness and to also encourage people to hold on to hope. People who've not just lost someone to suicide, but people who've lost someone to any cause or people who were going through big life changes or transitions. And I remember that first post that I shared, which was, hey, this is where I've been for the last year and a half. And I'm sorry if I've left some of you hanging. Posted it and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a lot. This is a lot. And I didn't even have any expectations. And immediately people started reaching out. And it wasn't just to offer me support, but it was to say, hey, I lost someone to suicide too. Or, hey, I've been struggling. And that was so special to me because up until that point, I really didn't realize how many people had been touched by suicide loss.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
awesome.
it's been raising awareness, being on social media. The blessing of it all is that it's helped me continue my healing journey. And from it, I've created a business offering one on one support to people who are grieving, offering mindful healing circles to women and families, to teens. And more recently, I've started working with men, which has been amazing because I never thought that I would speak to to men, to that
Yeah.
population. And the fact that I'm able to is such a gift, and having men reach out to me and share with me and open up to me, just, I don't know, I feel like Sean would be proud to
I think
know
he is.
that I'm
I
doing
think
that work.
Sean gave you the gift to reach others, you know? Yes, we lost him, but he's not forgotten, and I think that
Yeah,
he's guiding you on this path to help other men not fall into the same situation he did. Because, you know, he
yeah.
sounded like a great guy, honestly. From what I've heard, you know, it sounded like, you know, he doesn't want anyone else to struggle, and he's with you always, you know, in everything. And
Mhm.
even though we lose people all the time, but are they really gone? Probably, most likely, no, they're still with you. And I think
Yeah.
Sean's guiding you on the path of in helping you connect with other people, and that's so great though. When you came back, that first post, I would have been like, I would have been sweating bullets too, because what are people going to say? I've been gone. This is what I'm dealing with, you know. But the fact that you had such a positive response and other people reach out and say, listen, hey, I lost somebody too. You know, the great connections that you're making now and the changes you're making, especially with men. I think it's great that these guys are reaching out to you, because that's the hardest thing with men. We don't talk about these things. We're always programmed
Mm.
not to talk about them. Honestly, you know, depending on what generation you grew up in, that was the thing, you know. And when I saw your story and I reached out, I was like, yeah, I definitely need to get her on here. I need to have her come on and tell this story and, you know, talk a little more with her, you know, highlight what you're doing, because I love what you're doing. I think it's great. I think you're
Thank
tackling a
you.
topic that is so rough to talk about to people. Like I said, you know, because we had an issue. We had a situation on the show. Okay, so the scenario was a good friend of mine, Brian DeCasio. He came on the show, and the morning I met Brian, like something was off about Brian. It's like, okay, you could tell he was a little upset about something, you know. And 30 minutes in, Brian decides to go into the conversation to tell us that he goes, Pete, can I tell you something? I said, yeah. He goes, this morning I was sitting on the edge of the bed. I had the gun in my hand and I was thinking about
Mm.
killing myself. And he's like, I did. And something kept telling me not to. And he goes, you know, and then after talking to you and everything, it was real great, you know, and I was glad to get it out there. But Brian, I'm sorry, he struggled with, you know, the fact that his friend had taken his life recently, you know,
Mhm.
few months ago, but his friend had everything going for him. He was doing all these great things, and you know, and it goes to the same thing. It's like all these great things going on. People knew him, never even would have known this. This is a thought he had going on in his head, you know, and he was shook up about it. And you could tell though, you could visibly see he was shaken up. But after that, he looked a lot more mellow. He mellowed out a little bit after he got those thoughts out of his head and things like that too. And I've never had such an upward reaction when I told people about what happened. It's like, listen, I got to tell you what happened. I literally had a friend rewatch the episode, and he's my good friend Ken. He was watching it. I was like, Ken, I need you to watch this real fast, man. I need you to tell me that this is what just happened, because I think I was more in shock because when he had said it, I was like, did he really just say that? And he goes, oh yeah, man, he said it, you know. And I was like, oh god, we're gonna get canceled on YouTube. We're gonna have problems. But surprisingly, it wasn't that. None of that happened, you know. I was just like, and I was real mellow about it, but at the same time, I'm freaking out because I've never had to deal with this situation to this point.
Yeah.
And he was like, he was telling me these things, and every time I hit record, these conversations get so much easier because I bring a lot of professionals on and I learn new things on how to handle things like that. But like he came on and said that, when I tell you, the people were, I had like 15 emails immediately after people watched that episode, were like, oh my God, is he okay? Is he doing all right? I'm like, yeah, he's actually doing real fine. I've talked to him. I checked with him later that day. Hey man, you're doing good. You know, I know we had a very interesting conversation, needless to say, you know, and I didn't really want to touch on the subject with him yet because I'm like, we didn't know each other yet. But Brian and I are really good friends. We talk all the time, you know, we keep in touch and things like that too. But it's just like, it was just one of those moments where everybody's just like panicking because it's like, oh God, he's talking about suicide. I'm like, but these are the real conversations we need to have.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing a great thing raising awareness and having open conversations,
I
obviously
definitely,
providing a safe space for somebody to open up like that.
yeah, definitely. Listen, I wasn't anticipating that, but God, when it happened, I was like, okay, deep breath now, guys. It happened. Well, this is a space I'm in, so I already have to prepare for these
Yeah.
kind of things, you know. So, but it was interesting though, you know. Let me ask you though this: the first interview you did, how nervous were you? Like you're getting ready to tell Sean's story, and you're just like, you had to be sweating bullets. Like I'm gonna go out and start talking about this whole thing, and you know, you're getting ready for the interview. How nervous were you?
I was nervous. Fortunately, this particular podcast host had sent me questions ahead of time.
Yeah,
So that was helpful. Although now I prefer not to get questions ahead of time, because I think sometimes I get stuck on that and I like to just follow my
yeah.
energy when I speak. about this now, but I appreciated that then. It wasn't even a year ago. It was almost a year ago. I think it was last October, my first interview with Grief Out Loud. And I was nervous even having those questions. So I can't imagine how much more nervous I would have been if I hadn't had the
Yeah.
questions. Even now, there are times when I post something and when I'm getting ready to hit share, I get a little bit nervous, because while I know that overall it's doing a lot of good and people appreciate what I'm doing, there are still many people who don't
Yeah.
get it
They don't.
and who like to voice their opinions on my posts. And that's been hard. It's taken me a few months now because it was during Mental Health Awareness Month this year in May that I had a reel go viral, and with that came a lot of attention and a lot of every 10 supportive, encouraging, loving messages, I got one horrible message. And initially that first week I froze. I remember I was sitting here and I wanted to post something and I didn't even know what to post. I didn't know what to do. I was just frozen because of some of the comments I had gotten. And even, as recently as this week, I saw some comments, but I'm in a much better place now. It doesn't phase me
Yeah.
anymore.
Listen, I was gonna just tell them to go fuck themselves, honestly, but that's just me. Because, like, where do you get off being negative when you're doing such a positive thing? Like, if you don't agree, then just swipe on. That's a great thing with the internet. But you gotta have everybody's gotta have an opinion. Somebody's gotta say something stupid. And when you
Yeah.
say that, it makes me think of the comedian Bert Kreischer because he says it does the same thing. He's like, I could get all these positive comments, but I'm only looking at that negative comment, man. That's the first thing
Yeah.
I'm staring at. It's just like I just don't get people. It's like I get everybody wants to have an opinion, but if you don't agree with the subject, man, it's like stay the hell out of it. Then don't comment. Don't be bringing her down for doing what she's doing because you're doing great things out there. Don't let these people get to you. You know,
Thank
I
you.
I get some weird comments in some of my videos where we talk about some things, and I just don't even acknowledge them. I used to want to give into them. I used to like to go on TikTok and just start arguments with people, but now ever since starting this, it's like now I have a different mindset of things. Going to my own
Mhm.
personal journey to where I'm now. I've had so many conversations. I've had over 150 conversations at least, and like we were talking about, I'm out to December booking of people that just
Mhm.
want to come on here and share stories, their stories. And then there's other experts that come on and share like different tools that you can use, and I create a safe space for people to have this conversation because I don't care what people say. I still don't think mental health is talked about enough. When I started this show initially,
Mhm.
if you looked up the topic mental health, you see a lot of doctors and things like that, which is great. Like, but we're the real people having real conversations, And a friend of mine, she runs a podcast called The Shit That Goes On in Her Heads. She's had the same thought I did. She's like, well, like we're the real people having real conversations in these things, and it's just crazy that people like
Mhm.
have these like they want to be so negative when you're doing something so positive. It's like, hey, listen, yeah, and then they say like the most weird shit too. It's like, okay, sure, dude. Like you just start reading them
Yeah.
laughing, and it's like, yeah, okay, I'm not gonna comment to that one. As much as you want to click reply and start just trying to fight them off in the comment section, it's just God. I'm so sorry they do
Yeah.
that though. You know what I mean? It's just like you're talking about a subject that a lot of people can't handle. And then you have these immature people that come and start commenting stupid crap just because they think they're cool or they want to be funny. And then the comment section, a lot of times will turn on them and like, yeah, well, I don't think so, dude. You need to chill out or stuff like that too. But that's so cool though that you're posting these things because like I post stuff all the time. And sometimes my wife gets mad at me. She's like, you're just doing it for attention. I'm like, maybe I am. I just want to raise awareness about mental health. I joke with her sometimes like that. So she's just like, no, that's not what I meant. I'm like, oh, I know. I'm just fucking with you because I can. But
Yeah.
it's just like I love the internet. At the same time, I hate the internet because like I've
Yeah.
met a lot of mental health advocates through TikTok and things like that. When I first started doing the show, I was telling people what I'm doing. And people are just like, "Oh my god, this is so cool. This is a great idea. Can I be on the show? How do I get on the show?" And the demand in the beginning was like, I was booked out to the end of the year within the third week of the show being a conception. Like I told people about it. I told them what I was doing. This is the idea. What do you think? I had more messages come in than I could handle at that time. I think I got like 150
That's
responses.
amazing.
But it raised the point that it's like we people need this space to come in here, share their stories because I've handled a lot of interesting conversations, like other stuff. Like people have told me some other wild stories, that are just like you just sit there and go, what did you just say? Excuse me? It's like, but I've met so many cool people along the way though. And when I saw you, like I said, when I saw your story on Instagram, I was like, man, I gotta reach out. They're like, I'll reach out to everybody now. At first I was like, no, I don't know if these people are gonna come on. I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna shoot a message, say, hey, listen, this is a long shot. Here's what I'm doing. What do you think? And then when you responded, I was like, hell yeah, let's go. Let's get her on here because I love what you're doing. Like I said, the conversation of suicide needs to be had. And then the fact that you're talking to your children as young as they are and talking to them about it, I love it. I don't think that you can't do enough. I think you're doing the greatest thing ever for them by teaching them all these things ahead of time, and I think more parents need to do that. Stop being so worried about. So my question to you is that for parents that are trying to talk to their kids about mental health, do you have any tips or anything like any advice that you give, like, because you had to obviously tell them about Sean's suicide, even that, let's extend the question even further. Let's go with if you had to talk to someone and they're having to tell their kids that their dad had committed suicide, what would you tell them is just some advice? Like, listen, this is what I did. Give them a little advice. Like, hey, listen, here's why you should approach it.
Yeah. Well, I can share how I approached it. Outside of being honest, that's my number one piece of advice to parents, to anybody who is in contact with children on any level, is to always lead with the truth because you'll never regret it. And kids understand much more than
Hmm.
we give them credit for. But the night that he died, my kids asked me why. My son, he said, I don't get it. Dad got out of the army and he got a new job and we just bought that boat, mom. Like that's how they think. Why would dad kill himself? And so in that moment, as a mom, you just want to make everything right and you want to fix it immediately. And so I just started thinking, how can I tell them, explain this to them in a way that they'll understand, but also in a way that lets them know it's not about them. It was his own demons. And so I immediately started talking about the colors of our mind. And I said, everybody sees different colors in their mind. And I had each of them tell me what the colors were in their mind, and so I heard like bright green, rainbow, stars, purple. And I said, yeah, my color of the inside of my mind is bright and I have maybe a little bit of gray and black, but it's overall like very bright and cheery. But your dad didn't see things that way. Your dad had depression and anxiety, and for him it was hard to see the bright light colors. And I imagine that it got so dark in your dad's mind that he couldn't see the light at all, and that scared him, and he thought the only way to find light again would be to end his life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love the way you put that too. I think that's really great. I don't think I could have explained it any better. Honestly, God, that was amazing. Like that was
Thank
great.
you.
I think the way you did it too is funny to hear the stars. I'm like, well, listen, sweetheart, the stars are in a color. That made me laugh a little bit. Yes, I'm trying to be serious over there, but I mean, I'm like, I'm listening, you talk, I'm just like, stars, I'm like, oh, I love it, man. I love kids because they come up with the most random things ever. Like, oh, stars. I'm like, oh, but stars are not colors. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, this if you want stars, polka dots, hey, listen, that's cool. You can have those colors in it. But
Yeah.
I think that's a great approach, honestly. There's another podcast though. It's called the Survivors Podcast. Gretchen, the one that runs the shit that goes in her head, actually is teamed up with a woman named Lisa Sugarman. I'm gonna let you know right now. I normally talk about this stuff off here, but I'm gonna let you know right now. I'm gonna reach out to them and see about having you come on and talk to them as well. Lisa is actually the inventor of the site helphub.co. Oh no,
Mm.
it's the Help Hub. The Help Hub. She has a Help Hub. It's basically like a one-stop shop for mental health for people to go. And I think it's a great tool, things you could promote as well and let people know, like, listen, hey, Lisa did this, but Gretchen is actually tried to commit suicide. And Lisa's dad actually committed suicide, but she didn't know that at first. And then she eventually found out what happened. So, I
Mm.
think it's going to be a great fit. Like I said, I'm going to reach out to her. Gretchen's actually a friend of mine in a group of we're in now that we talk about things. I'm definitely gonna have to reach out to her for sure because I think that what you're doing is awesome, and teaming up with them as well. Lisa and them might be such a great resource for you as well, and especially that and stuff like that too. Because I think that what you're doing is great, and like I said, anytime you're posting something, you hit me up for sure. I'm down. I'll post it. I'll repost it every single time for you. I'll post it on my stories. everywhere. I'm on everything, honestly. So, I try to
Thank
stay
you.
stretched out, but I love what you're doing. I think the way that you approach those young kids about how it is a really great idea, and things like that too. And I think that what you're doing now, I feel like Sean's here right now, guiding you along the way, telling you like, listen, hey, you could help so many other people. Use my story to help people, and I know a lot of people, that are in those dark times. It's like, I think I love the explanation because it's what it's like. Because I'm a suicide survivor too. I literally I've almost killed myself a few times. There's one time it was so bad. I think the reference to the light and the darkness is the best way to look at it because it was like, I don't know if you ever seen that movie Get Out. The one
Mm-mm.
where, okay, so the synopsis of the movie is that there's this really weird community and this couple shows up, okay, and the guy's like, all these people are looking really weird. The girl doesn't see it, but the guy's like, hey, there's something weird going on here, okay? So there's a part in the movie where the room is completely black. He's sitting in a chair, and this woman was using this tapping sequence to hypnotize him. So he's like, he can't get out of the chair, but he can see reality. And that's what it's kind of like when you described it. That's the thought that came to my head because it was what it was like. Like I was literally on that edge, looking over, ready to
Mhm.
jump. But then that light there is what I was grasping for. And luckily, I didn't succeed with what I was attempting to do at that time. And I
Mhm.
think that's a great way to explain what goes on in a lot of people's heads like that too. It's like, it's so dark in there. They see that light and they think that, that's the way to get to the light is that, unfortunately I got to take my life. And a lot of times voices in the back of your head will start kicking in too and be like, oh no, you should do this. Because I've had those too, like the voices in my head going, listen, you should just take care of it. You should just end it. Things like that all just pop up in your head. And I could tell you from experience that that's exactly what it's like. I think your representation of what you just told the kids, I think it's the best way to look at it because it really what it was though. It's like you're in this everything's so dark. You see that light and you're trying to get to the light and you're like and you don't think anything else is gonna work. There's no other answer to it. You're battling demons and things like that too. And I think that's like I said, I really love that. Honestly, that's the best explanation of what goes on in people's heads when they're thinking these things because they're thinking that I won't be a burden anymore. People don't notice me. I'm not there. And like I tell people, just be nice to people. Just like one kind
Mhm.
conversation with people, you could save their day. Like, the heart thing is always sticking with me. I love that idea. Like I said, me and my buddy Sean, we always message each other. Me and Ken, we check in each other regularly, just because we're men, and we're the second most likely group to commit to have take our lives. Because that's what really
Mhm.
shocked me into getting into this. Is like I did a men's mental health episode on another podcast I was doing with some friends, and then it was like I was just like something about hearing that I'm in the second most likely group to take my life is just like it shocked me to the point of like, well, damn, dude, why are we not talking about this enough? What the hell's going
Mhm.
on? And like I said, though, I when I started this show, it was just like it was a mission to talk more about mental health, but at the same time, you can watch me evolve as a person because I have a lot of self discovery and my own healing journey because I had a lot of childhood trauma and things like that too. But I now have this. Dr. Tim said it best. He said that since I was abandoned as a kid, now I have this need to make people feel accepted. And this space
Mhm.
feels like that warm hug that a lot of people need. It's like
Mm.
you need a safe place to come. You need somebody understands, somebody that's willing to listen to your conversation. And I've done over, like I said, 150 plus of these interviews, and I think this has probably been the best one so far because what you're doing is great. You're causing the ripple effect for that conversation to happen. And then the way you're explaining it to those kids and letting them know. And like I said, I really feel like Sean's with you. I don't know how spiritual you are, but I feel like his presence
Mhm.
is here. He's just kind of there with you. And every
Yeah.
time you talk about these things and every post you do, Sean's clicking it with you kind of thing.
Mhm.
I love what you're doing. As we start getting ready to wrap up, I want to ask you a very important question. I just have two questions for you. Okay. So I ask all
Mhm.
my guests two questions. One actually came from Gretchen when me and her interviewed. She asked me, and I'm going to ask you, if your mental health had a song, what would your mental health song be?
Wow.
It's a great question.
My mental health song.
Yep. We've
Wow.
had Rage Against the Machine, Michael Jackson's Beat It. We've had a whole slew of different songs. Led Zeppelin was actually one of my other guests, he said. The first song that
Gosh.
pops in mind when you hear that question, what is it?
Well, I thought of anxiety. Um, that's the first one that popped up in my head, so I'll go
There,
with that.
there you go.
Yeah,
It's a good question though. Think about it because it's like, wait a
it
minute, what did he
is.
just ask me? I always try to clip that part of the interview too and post it because everybody's responses are funny. We had an author, Susan Snow. She came on and she said I was going to make fun of her. And I was like, what? I would never make fun of you. Stop. I would never do that. She's like, I said, so what is it? She said, Rage Against the Machine. I'm like, okay, this is
That's a
an
good one.
interesting conversation.
Mhm.
So my next question for you, and I ask everybody, and the whole purpose of this podcast is, if you could break the stigma of mental health, and suicide in general, if you want to just kind of go there with that topic, what would you tell someone? Like, what is the things that you hear that people misconception of things that you just like, hey, stupid, quit saying these things? What would that be?
I think, well, I would remind people that you don't see the signs always. And I think in most cases, when somebody loses someone to suicide, they will say, I never would have imagined. I didn't see the signs. And I have a love hate relationship with the suicide prevention campaign. Look for the signs because I didn't see any of those, and those signs are, somebody talking about death, someone saying people would be better without them, somebody giving away all his belongings, detaching, not, engaging in life. And so I would want to start or continue or emphasize that conversation because it's so important. It just highlights the need, like you said, for us to all be kind to each other no matter what, and to understand that anybody could be going through something and you might not always know.
I don't think I could have said that any better myself. I think what you just did's fantastic. Thank you so much for coming and talking to me. I appreciate you
Thank you,
taking the.
Pete.
Is there any websites you wanna plug for anybody to come see you? I know you're on Instagram, you can plug your handle as well, let people know where they can find you if they wanna come show some support. What would it be?
Yeah, my Instagram handle and my website are the same, my first and last name, Reshma Kearney, and I'm always happy to connect through DMs,
Yes, she
just
is.
happy to
She's very
support.
receptive, trust me. That's how I got her to come on here. She was great. I thank you so much again for coming. I appreciate it. I absolutely love what you're doing. Keep it going, and Sean's there with you. I guarantee it, man. He knows that you're doing something big. You're using his loss as a way for other people to start connecting and realize that suicide doesn't have to be always be the answer, guys. Well, with that being said, guys, we're gonna wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. Guys can find me on X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to iHeartRadio. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you could do could save someone's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete for Anxiety, saying off saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey, how's your mental health today?